Slides. Here we go. Right. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Thriving Dentist Expert Panel webinar series. I'm your host for this session, Don Adisha, and it's great to have you here. Tonight, we are talking about the Dental Workforce Reset 2026, how to solve the hygiene and assistant bottleneck without burning out the team. And yeah, this is a very real issue for dental owners, practice managers, coaches, and leaders because staffing is no longer just an HR issue. It affects capacity, revenue, patient experience, and the health of the team. So we have two excellent panelists with us here tonight. The goal is pretty simple. Lead with practical ways to stabilize your workforce, protect your team, and build a smarter staffing strategy. Now, a few quick housekeeping notes before we begin. We are recording here tonight. You will receive the replay link after the session in your inbox, so you can go ahead and share it with your colleagues and partners. However, do not let that make you passive because the real value is happening right here, right now, live. Use the Q&A button for questions you want to ask the panelists. Use the chat for conversations and reactions. I have my eye on both the feeds, so please do participate as we go along. Now, before we do get into the panel, I want to extend my gratitude towards our sponsor here tonight, Echo Marketing, who's making this event possible. Founded by the very same co-host of the Thriving Dentist podcast, Naren Arul Raja. Echo has spent more than 18 years helping healthcare and dental practices improve online visibility, track the right patients, and turn interests into booked appointments. Now, the reason this matters in a workforce conversation is that growth has to be intentional. Practices do not just need more activity, they need the right patient flow. So, the right positioning and a clear path from search to schedule. Stay with us till the end as we have a fantastic resource from Equa that can change your growth trajectory for the better in 2026 and beyond. With that being said, let's get to know our panelists and then into the work. So first up, we have Lauren Garneaux, a DSO account executive at Kwikly. Lauren works with growing DSOs on complex staffing challenges where speed, reliability, and transparency really matter. Now, what makes Lauren valuable tonight is that she has seen both the clinical side and the admin side of dental practice across both private and DSO environments. Now, with that being said, I would like to welcome Lauren to the panel.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Happy to have you here, Lauren. Next up, we have, right, Jamie Gialanella.
Gialanella, you
Gialanella?
got it.
Gialanella. I practiced it a few times, but yeah. So Jamie is a partner at DDSmatch and a dental industry veteran with more than 20 years of experience. Jamie specializes in practice transitions and associate placement. And before DDSmatch, she spent a decade with Patterson Dental advising dentists on practice management, startup development, marketing strategy, and transitions. Now, tonight, Jamie is bringing a strong market level view of hiring, pipeline building, and what practices need to do before the staffing gap becomes urgent. That being said, Jamie, welcome to the panel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to make a quick mention of Jenny here, Jenny Zamaripa. Um, Jenny is unfortunately not able to join here with us tonight live due to some last minute scheduling conflicts. She extends her support and yeah, but do not worry, we are going to have a great conversation because we are in good hands, I think, with our Jamie and Lauren here. So with that, stop sharing the slide deck here and let's get into our main questions. So my first question here is to you, Lauren. Hygiene vaccine rates. No. Hygiene vacancy rates keep climbing even when practices raises pay. Now, what is driving that gap beyond compensation?
Don't add an extra layer of vaccines in it. That's the last thing we need for the hygiene problem. But I think, really one of the biggest misconceptions in a hygiene shortage is that it's just purely compensation. And I think we're so far beyond that. I think compensation definitely got everyone's attention over the last few years. I don't think I need to state why. But we're really seeing now that I think a lot of practices have adjusted to those wages, but they're still struggling to attract and really retain talent, right? And I think what's really changed is the mindset of the workforce. We're in a different mindset than we were 5 or 10 years ago. And I think now more than ever, hygienists really do have so many different ways that they're evaluating all their opportunities. They're looking at schedule flexibility. They're looking at the patient load. How long are my patients per SRPs? Leadership support. Do we have hygiene mentors, clinical autonomy, and kind of overall quality of life, right? I have a couple offices that might be paying a few dollars more per hour, but really expects those providers to work through lunch, run behind all day, and they see a higher volume of patients. And we know that a lot of hygienists might, choose a lower paying job that offers a little bit more like sustainable work environment and flexibility, especially as we know women kind of run the hygiene world. But it's just really a generational shift, I think, that I'm really seeing. Like you said, I've worked in an office, private and corporate. I've been a dental assistant. I've been an office manager. I've lived it. I've seen it. I know it. And I think the newer clinicians just truly are prioritizing flexibility, balance in a way that maybe previous generations didn't. So they don't necessarily define career success by working more hours and maximizing income. They really want something that they can sustain long term.
Now, is this mainly a supply issue or are practices designing roles that fewer hygienists actually want?
It could be a mixture of both. It just kind of depends on the area too, and what we're looking at. Um, it's like, I think that's a hard question to answer.
Mhm. Now, what should a practice owner audit this week before posting another hygienist ad?
What should they do?
Yeah.
Audit, you said?
What should a yeah audit
What do you
audit
mean?
as in like what should they practice owner audit this week before posting another hygienist ad?
Well, you'd have to look at the previous ones. How long has this rec been open?
Mhm.
Are we looking for someone that has 19 different skills that maybe they won't use all of them and we're trying to find a unicorn that doesn't exist? Are we really like posting the shift at market rates? Have we used external, resources to try to help guide you through an additional pool of maybe professionals you haven't had before? But also kind of looking internally, like maybe you have so many candidates that come in, but for some reason they don't stick. Is it because there might just be in office drama or someone's pushing them out the door? They don't feel that it's a culture fit. Maybe the instruments need to be replaced. So I think there's a lot of different things that offices can look at internally first.
That's really interesting. Now you mentioned a hygiene mentor. What do you mean by that?
So we have a lot of different groups where they have hygiene mentors or kind of clinical leadership support within different groups that really lead them. There are some great names out there for some really great groups where their hygiene retention is incredible. They're doing something right. They're truly just pouring into those hygienists to make sure that they feel supported, that they are champions in their offices because their role is just extremely important. So I've seen firsthand many groups that will pour into these. They do hygiene summits where they're really just kind of going through everything, all the new softwares and PMSs and scanners and all the things that these hygienists need to know. And they just make sure that they're fully equipped, they're comfortable and confident going into those practices and seeing those patients every day.
Mhm. Check. Thank you very much, Lauren. Now, Jamie, rural and suburban practices face the sharpest of shortages. What structural conditions make those markets harder to staff than urban ones?
I think that, that's a great question. I think it depends on kind of where you are within the United States, but I think that there's a couple factors that kind of play into that. And one is that the talent pool is just smaller in a more rural or suburban area. Urban areas tend to attract more professionals, at least from a dental perspective. You find that even with associate dentists. They would prefer to be in an urban practice rather than one that is rural or suburban. Because I think lifestyle also plays a role in that. What is it that they want more so outside of the practice that is going to bring them joy? Do they have a good school system? Does that area provide the extracurricular activities that they want to be doing? Sometimes it's as simple as does it provide the shopping that they want? And then I think that the third is competition. And Lauren kind of hit on this also. If you don't have the right tools, or you don't have the right systems in place in your dental office, it doesn't really matter where you are, you're going to feel those shortages. And if you haven't sat down to meet the needs of your hygienists or assistants or associates for that matter, then you will find yourself kind of continually churning in those areas. Because, like Lauren said, large corporate groups, DSOs, have a system in place to continually educate their team and allow them to find areas of growth that sometimes single dentists just don't do, and they don't have the resources because they don't have the hours. And so sometimes I find that those seem to play the biggest role.
Hmm. Okay, a lot there to unpack. Let's talk here about what's like this first step you would recommend for practices in those kind of markets to really highlight to change that trajectory.
I think finding out what it is that people want in those areas, and I think that varies across the country. Maybe people prefer a flexible schedule. Maybe you have two groups of hygienists. You have one who has small children, and they're willing to work kind of in the morning into the afternoon, but they want to be home to pick up from the bus stop. And then you kind of have a second shift that comes in depending on your hours. But it's really taking the time to get to know, am I meeting the needs? Because like Lauren said, it might not always be compensation. We've kind of already hit upon that. That's been a 6 year, almost 7 year conversation now. So, it's a matter of diving deeper. What is it that our team wants in order to make them successful? Because when they're successful, the practice is.
Now, you also mentioned certain tools and systems being necessary as a framework, as a foundation for hygienists to
Mhm.
really thrive. Could you give us like a few quick ones that are a must when it
I
comes to tools
think
and systems?
I think it's having cutting edge technology in your practice that allows them to work smarter and not harder. It's how you schedule the patients. Are you so busy that you are in need of a hygiene assistant so that the hygienist isn't then therefore constantly cleaning up and changing her room and doing all of the things that kind of take time out of patient care? Or have you built that into the schedule so that the hygienist does not feel overwhelmed in those moments? It's all about creating the right environment. And each practice really is different. It's hard to say if you did this, then this would be your outcome because each practice is different and patients are expecting different, they have different expectations for their hygienist as well.
Hmm. So, how much of capacity should a hygienist be running at for them to get an assistant?
Oh gosh, I don't know, Lauren, you might be better at answering that. I have not worked in a dental practice. I might defer that one to you. I hate to say that, but my guess is if they're on like a 30-minute, so they're seeing two patients an hour, they need somebody in there. But I think it also just depends on kind of the way the practice is run. But Lauren, I hate to put you on the spot like that.
No, you're good. I mean, obviously, I was never a hygienist, but I've managed plenty of practices where we kind of didn't run an assisted hygiene schedule. Certainly, probably should have. But I would say like 45-minute appointments, you're going to have a DA to help you like burn and turn those rooms. Just simply for like sterilization, flipping rooms, helping you with patient notes or perio charting. Anything that you can do. Obviously, I think most of our hygienists really like those 60 to 90-minute new patient appointments, 6 minutes for recalls. But I would say in order to, it just depends on the size of the office. How many operatories do we have? How far behind are we on patients? Sometimes they can do like a perio push for
Right.
certain weeks, but I think there's a lot
Mhm.
of variables that come into play when it comes to find like if you're really going to have assisted hygiene, but most offices have a really good flow of when they do have that. And sometimes, like even when they do need temp coverage, they're like, "Hey, we're going to run an assisted hygiene schedule," and they put it in the notes, and there you have a dedicated dental assistant to help you with this, and they're open to doing that.
Yeah. Because that's really where the relationship starts in the dental practice is in the hygiene chair. So you want to make
Mhm.
sure that you're running as effectively and efficiently as you can so that the patient feels like they weren't rushed in and out of the appointment.
Yeah, and I work a ton with a lot of like rural suburban offices just because when we try to partner with groups or even private practices in these like micro markets that we call, you
Mhm.
truly do have to lock arms and say, how can we support each other? Because if you've exhausted all of the other efforts and someone else isn't helping filling shifts or your efforts or your recruiting team is still struggling and they're reaching out to us, I think most of those organizations that are truly succeeding in those markets, they tend to think about their workforce strategy a little bit differently,
Mhm.
investing heavily in retention, creating flexible schedules, as Jamie had mentioned. Maybe you have like two part-time hygienists that can work different hours. And leveraging temporary and flexible labor. That's the only way you're going to be able to be like, hey, I don't have anyone to work Fridays, but I know that I can
Right.
call someone to fill in those days. So by the time you have a vacancy in an office in a rural area, you're already behind. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
And that's a great segue onto my next question there, Lauren. Now, when production is already being impacted, how should practices think about the trade-off between using temp coverage to stabilize operations versus slowing down to make the right permanent hire?
Yes, the delicate balance of temp labor versus perm labor. So honestly, I think a lot of practices underestimate the true cost of an empty hygiene chair. I know
Mhm.
insurance is not great on reimbursements. I've lived it. I know it. I've been there. I know the pain that it is when you're getting those EOBs. But when a hygiene position goes unfilled, it impacts far beyond just lost production from that provider schedule, right? Like hygiene is the primary engine for diagnosis and treatment acceptance in a practice. And I've seen and felt that. So when patients can't get in for preventative care, treatment opportunities on the doctor's schedule are going to be delayed or pushed out.
Mhm.
Restorative schedules, they're going to start to soften. And retention is going to change. There's more dentist office than Starbucks on every corner. And like the loyalty is just different than it was, previously. So they can go to the dentist down the street to get an appointment if you can't get them in. So I think my perspective, like temporary staffing shouldn't be viewed as a sign that like practice is like a settling or even kind of struggling. It really is a risk management tool. And the first thing about protecting patient access is just really maintaining the stability of that office. Second is just kind of finding the long-term team member too. Obviously, you're going to have the long-term member permanent home in that office, but they don't have to compete with each other. And I think using temporary coverage really allows our teams to maintain just a better continuity of care, preserve your revenue, protect your production. And that's what we preach all the time. And it reduces stress on your existing team. I've lived what in an office on an overstaffed day, and I've also survived an office in an understaffed day. So I know what they look like, and your patients can tell. They really can. They can. So I think reducing stress on the existing team it leads to ultimately better hiring decisions because they're not operating from like a position of urgency. They're like, hey, I know when I bring in a temp, at least my patients are taken care of. I can make sure my production is stabilized, and then we can still continue to even talk to these temps that do come in about a permanent position. So I think a lot of the leaders who, they just need to recognize that every vacancy creates additional pressure on every single person in that team. And no one likes
Mhm.
that. Everyone likes to go to office like, I have a full schedule, I have a full team, let's rock it out. So if a practice operates like understaffed for too long, one vacancy is going to become two because even high performers are going to reach a breaking point. And I think we've all seen that. So I think that's why retention has become just as important, if not more important, than the recruitment piece of it.
Now, Lauren, earlier on, you mentioned that hygienists are the primary drivers of diagnosis as well as treatment acceptance. I'm curious about that later part, treatment acceptance. Why do you think that hygiene plays such a big role in that?
Really, when your hygienist comes in, that's the main, when I go to the dentist, my hygienist knows my life. They know my kids, my mom goes there, like they know
Mhm.
everything. And so they build that relationship. And if I go to buy a car from someone that I bought a car from 6 times, I'm likely going to continue coming back. So I'm going to trust their word and be
Mhm.
like, okay, I know Lauren said that this is what I needed to do. I'm going to get the doctors, come in and talk to me. But truly they're like, hey, listen, this is what I suggest, or this is what Dr. So and so is suggesting, but they truly take a position of relationship when it comes to those diagnoses and just kind of treatment acceptance.
Okay. Building that relationship is incredibly important. And of course, it cannot be understated. Now, you also mentioned that every vacancy creates more pressure for the existing team, right? If that is the case, how do we really address that? If we want to increase the, what to say, what the assistants do, but face a bit of resistance from the dentist, what is the right sequence to work through that tension?
Is that a me question or a Jamie question?
It's a both question, really. I'm curious. First, Lauren, you can perhaps start with it, and then Jamie can take it over.
So ask me one more time.
Sure. So I'm just curious as to know, like, when we are going about expanding the work required from our current team members, what is perhaps a right sequence to do it?
So say we're going to implement a new implant system, or we're going to have a, different type of PMS. Is that kind of the question and how we're going to go about implementing that?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more on the lines of like when a practice owner wants to expand what the assistants do, but faces resistance from the dentist, what is the right sequence to work through that tension?
I think truly at first it's just going to be, do we have enough chairs? Do we have enough time? Do we have enough manpower to even make this happen? And that almost kind of ties into, okay, well, if we don't, where can we turn to? If we're going to extend hours, or maybe we're not open on Saturdays, we're going to play with maybe opening one Saturday a month, but not a single permanent team member wants to work a Saturday. Well, how can we fix that? If we can get $10,000 in production on a Saturday and but none of my permanent team members want to work, well, how do we pull someone else in to make sure we can do that? So really, I think it comes down to those morning huddles, sitting down and figuring out as a team, like, hey, this is my idea, but you need to come with solutions for those ideas too. You can't just be like, hey, here's a problem. What do we do to fix it? Everyone needs to have their input on it too.
Mhm.
Jamie, what are
I
you
agree
thinking?
completely. I think we all know that sometimes dentists will go to a CE course over a weekend or over a week and come back with all of these great ideas of what they want to implement in their practice. But really, the ones who are implementing it are the team. And so, if you've created that open line of communication with your team, you then can sit down with them, like Lauren suggested, at a morning huddle, at a team lunch, to discuss this is what I would love to do. This would be ideal, but this is what we have to do to get there. And without that, that makes it very difficult. No team member, I don't believe, wants to be told what to do, but want to feel like they're part of that decision-making process also. And so, the doctor just has to find those ways, or a group who owns the practices or what have you has to find a way to kind of create those moments of communication to get those goals, accomplished. Or sometimes some of those things do fall short. If somebody isn't willing to work a Saturday, do you have the ability to hire someone new to kind of understand the way the practice works? Because you don't want Saturday to work different than Monday through Friday. You need it to
Mm,
all work seamlessly together. So.
oof. Now, Jamie, how do you weigh offering scheduling flexibility against protecting daily appointment capacity when both are directly affecting revenue?
I don't know that they should necessarily be competing priorities because I think that, you know, offering that flexible schedule many times increases profitability. And if you look at them as competing forces, then they're not working together. But if that's something the office needs, then you need them to be working hand in hand. And when you see that the flexible schedules are working. I walk into offices all the time that we're, going to sell, and I hear things like, I have 2.5 hygienists, or I have 4 part-time hygienists. And it works perfectly for the practice, but if the doctor wasn't open to about that, what would they be leaving on the table like we discussed? Nobody wants a hole in the schedule. Nobody wants to be rescheduled in hygiene and wait however much longer for them to come into the practice to be seen. So doctors have to look at those two things kind of as coinciding with each other, and working together so that they can provide what is needed within their practice, but also, keep the profit margin at a healthy spot.
If we give flexibility once, everyone will ask for it. How do you respond to the dentist who say that?
I don't know if I don't think you want to look at it like that. I think you want to look at it like, this is how I've set up my practice. I have thought about this so uniquely, and my team is so important to me that this is what we offer. It's not like we're just offering this to Sally, but we're offering this to everybody. What does this look like? Within how can I grow my practice within the needs of my hygienists and assistants? Because without them, you're not growing your practice.
Hmm.
Mhm. Check. Uh, mm, Now, Lauren, what is the earliest operational sign that a practice's staffing model is starting to break down before turnover actually happens? What are those early signals?
Um, I would say, I mean, that's really hard too because most leaders wait until someone resigns, maybe to recognize that there was a staffing problem in the first place. But by that point, the warning signs, they've been
Further.
present for a while. Maybe they're just not aware of them, or that, that person maybe hasn't spoken up too much. But I think the earliest indicator is operational strain. Like you're going to start to see that. And the practice is still functioning, at its best capacity, but it's becoming more dependent on like extreme effort from your team, and managers are spending more time like filling schedule gaps and verifying insurance, and providers are skipping those lunches, or maybe they're eating in their
Mhm.
op. And or they're staying late. No one wants to stay past 5 or 6 or whatever your hours are. So I think front office teams, they're constantly reshuffling appointments. Team members are just taking on more and more responsibilities outside of their normal roles and duties just to keep the day kind of moving on. And leadership, I've seen historically kind of interprets this as like, oh, like commitment and teamwork and everyone's working hard together. But in reality, I think it's a sign that, the system is operating way beyond its capacity. Because like we said, like every great and amazing rock star champion has their breaking points, and sometimes there's some are stronger than others, and they're not going to be too vocal about it, or they'll really try to push through and be a true team member. But I think another one, they're probably the most important, is patient access, right? So like if hygiene schedules start booking like farther and farther out, patients are going to have a harder time finding your appointment that fit their schedule, their family needs, or maybe they
Right.
work Monday through Friday and they can only work, come in on Saturdays. And those are often signs that the capacity of the workforce is just no longer aligned with that patient demand and patient flow. So in my experience, I think the biggest lesson I've learned from working in both private practice and DSOs is that turnover is not just like a sudden rare kind of event.
Yeah.
It's usually an outcome of a prolonged kind of period of true stress in that
Mhm.
office, and it will build and it'll build and it'll build. So I think organizations and offices pay attention to your workload, the schedule pressure that your hygienists, dental assistants, or doctors are having, patient access. If you're seeing that, hey, this patient had an appointment today, but my next, open available recall is 4 months out or 6 months out, that's a big stress issue. And just team fatigue. They're going to get burned out. And so try to intervene long before someone decides to leave with all of those indicators.
Mhm.
When you want to intervene, what's like the best way to go about doing that, Lauren?
I think it's really helpful when you have these meetings, like have that open door communication with your team. Everyone is going to take, conversations a little bit differently. Everyone takes criticism a little bit differently. But I think going in and saying, hey, how is it going in the office? Like a regional, an office manager, a VP of ops, build those relationships with those people and that are in the, in the trenches sometimes. Like sometimes they just want to be heard and it could just be the smallest thing. And it truly makes their days. So just building that relationship internally, I've found when I was managing a team of like 12 people, everyone was so different. We're not
Mhm.
managing people, we're managing personalities. And so
Mhm.
learning that person's personality and what makes them tick makes all the difference in the world.
Mhm.
Check. Um, right.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Lauren. And I want to take a quick pause here and share something that I promised earlier on. Right. Yes. So, like I mentioned earlier, I have a fantastic resource from our team at Eco Marketing for everyone joining us tonight, a complimentary one-on-one practice growth session designed specifically for dental practice owners. Now, we have spent the last half hour building the smarter way to think about staffing pressure, team retention, flexibility. Now, there is one more layer that'll help all of that land. Right now, while we are talking, patients in your market are searching for dental practices they can trust. They're searching for things like implant dentist near me, veneers before and after, or increasingly more common, things like my tooth at the back of my mouth hurts, but I'm afraid of pain. What to do? Long tail searches. So they're looking for exactly the kind of practice that has a strong team, clear experience, and the capacity to serve them well. But the question here is, does your practice show up when they search? And that's exactly what this strategy session is built to answer. So, in your strategy session, you'll sit down with a senior marketing analyst who already works with thriving dental clinics across the globe. You'll get a live audit of how you can attract more of your ideal clients, build your reputation, and grow sustainably. The marketing analyst will actually spend several hours researching your online presence, your competition, your local SEO, everything, and they'll come to the call ready to walk you through custom recommendations just for your practice. Now, this session is designed to help you answer those questions and fix anything that's not quite working. It's usually a $900 valued session, completely complimentary for you tonight. So you can go ahead and book your session by scanning that QR code you're seeing on your screen right now, or click the link in the chat box. It'll take less than a minute to reserve your spot. Availability is limited since every audit involves real research into your local market. And with that being said, we'll get back to the panel. Right. We have arrived at a very interesting segment here called Your Q&A. This is a Ask Me Anything segment. Few ways you can participate. You can raise your hand to speak live and ask our panelists your questions, your burning questions, or you go ahead and type it in the chat or the Q&A box. It's preferred if you drop it in the Q&A box, but whatever works for you. We want to ensure that you do not leave this session with, wishing that, oh, I wished I had asked Lauren that question, while you're turning in for the night. So, while you get warmed up, I have a couple of questions that I pulled out from our community, the Thriving Dentist. 10,000 like-minded people on Facebook have joined that community. I think we'll be able to drop a link in the chat as well if you want to go ahead and please feel free to join us. So I have pulled out a couple of questions here. Let's get this started. Ooh, these are tough ones that I had picked out earlier on. So, okay, let's start with this one. Be honest, isn't hygiene just a dead-end job in 2026? Why should I stay in clinical work when I can get a remote tech job for the same pay and zero stress? I didn't write these questions. I paraphrased it a little bit. Uh, Jamie, how about you get started on this one? This is a free-for-all. Please feel free to
I
answer
would say
and
no, stay with hygiene. Stick with that. Stay in hygiene. Do not get a remote tech job. I think I think the hygiene job in a dental practice is probably the best job when you're working under the right circumstances. Teams can really make it or break it, like we've discussed this evening. And I think offices would be so lost without a hygienist. And I think it's such a great job. It's such a great spot to be. They are the glue that holds the practice together. Like Lauren said, I love our hygienist. I remember the first time I took my children to the hygienist, and it was like just such an awesome experience. And I think for those of us who have those relationships, I would hate to see my hygienist leave and go do some remote tech job or whatever it was that was listed here. But they are truly the glue that holds the practice together. If it was not for them, I think dentists would be, um, you know, not as nearly as successful as they currently are. And the hygiene, like Lauren said before, is diagnosing, talking patients through the process. Oftentimes, a dentist will leave the room, and all the questions are going to the hygienist or the assistant, depending on where the patient is being seated. But hygiene just plays such an important role that would be devastating to the industry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think being a clinical hygienist is a dead-end career. First of
Um,
all, you can still have your 9 to 5 AI job from home, and you can still pick up a shift every now and then on other platforms. So you can still stay clinical and keep that piece of you happy. But I think it's like, first of all, it's so relationship driven. So if you don't like relationships, hygiene probably isn't going to be the best fit for you anyway. So it might be good if you work from home on a 9 to 5 at your desk, but it's truly like one of the most impactful roles in the dental office. Like they drive patient relationships, preventative
Yep.
care, treatment acceptance, and practice growth. I mean, like we can do all these cool things, but when we have like new or intraoral scanners or AI or different ways that we can like see different decay in teeth, hygienists get more excited about it than dentists do sometimes.
Mhm.
Like they love that. So I think, today's workforce, as we talked about it, it's changed. They want flexibility, they want growth, they want to feel valued as we all do. So it's not just a financial thing, but it's just it kind of, ends with them professionally too. But I certainly don't think it's a dead end career because in hygiene there are so many opportunities like we kind of talked about hygiene mentor, leadership roles. I mean, there are so many hygienists that still stay clinical somehow, some way, whether that be in an office, actually seeing patients or still going into an office to kind of, train people. I think that would be amazing.
Mhm.
All right. Now, we have another question from an RDA. You treat assistants like high-speed janitors. If you're so desperate for help, why won't you actually let us do the clinical work we're licensed for? So I'm assuming they're asking a dentist this, but yeah. Do we have any answers for that?
So essentially, a dental assistant wants to be able to do more jobs,
Yeah,
but they're already high speed at what they do anyway.
high-speed janitors. So I think they're being used for things that are not necessarily what their license has trained them for. So
And I
it
think
seems
that
like a
varies by state, so
Yeah,
that
I was
depends
gonna say
on
there's state
what
laws.
state you are an RDA in. But yes,
Yeah.
I mean, if a successful dentist, the 1% dentist, is using his team to their greatest advantage. The great dentists are not holding any team member back, whether you work the front desk, whether you're an assistant, whether you're a hygienist. Nobody is being held back because their success is related to the success of the team. So if there are things then that goes back to this conversation about communication. Is the RDA communicating exactly what it is that he or she would love to be doing within the practice that would not only boost patient experience, but would boost profitability within the practice? And that's just a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, if you're
Mm.
underutilizing or kind of like undervaluing your dental assistant, we're making a big mistake, right?
Right.
Like they are a big piece of glue. I know that there's back and forth on who's the glue in the office, but if they feel like they're only there to like flip rooms and sterilize instruments, then we failed them, right? Like we need to start recognizing the assistants that are high performing and that are highly skilled and that want to be the top of their licensure, whether that's expanded functions, patient education, like treatment presentation, those digital workflows, scanning, all, all the things that they want to do within the state allowed responsibilities, and just pouring into them too, because they need support, just like hygienists do.
Yep.
Okay, one last question I got over here. I make more money temping and don't have to deal with office drama. Why would anyone actually with actual talent choose to be a permanent employee today? Why would Jamie, would you like to give an answer or
I mean,
your
I think that's a
thoughts?
great question. And I think that goes back to lifestyle of the person. If temping is what is suiting and fitting your lifestyle, then most definitely continue temping and have that opportunity to work within multiple dental practices within your community. But for a hygienist who's potentially looking for a different level of stability and a different level of growth, permanent employment is wonderful. And so they both have their pros and cons. I don't know that I would say that one way is better than another. In terms of selling a dental practice, it's very difficult to sell a dental practice that only has temp hygienists. So it's
Mhm.
advantageous for the doctor themselves to find, recruit, hire full-time permanent employees. But if it's just a personal choice for the hygienist, I mean, you have to decide what fits your lifestyle best.
Yeah,
Mm.
and obviously I can talk on that. I'm a big believer in both. Obviously, I
Mhm.
think for some clinicians, temping is probably the right choice for you. Like if you love different environments and you want to
Mhm.
learn different softwares and all these different, like that's great. Do that for as long as you want. It
Yeah.
offers
Mm.
flexibility, variety, sometimes higher hourly depending.
Mhm.
And it does give you the ability to avoid some challenges that come with being in an office every day, but we've also learned that people don't just leave permanent roles simply because temping pays more. Like there's a lot to
Yeah.
unpack behind that, right? Like they
Mm.
leave because the permanent experience, private or DSO, isn't meeting their needs. Like they're not being valued. They don't have the support. They don't have flex. I mean, there's so many things to unpack behind that.
Mm.
So, as we've talked about it, I think practices that are really successfully retaining those clinicians, they're creating the environments that people want to stay in. It's not just
Mhm.
because I make two more dollars an hour temping. They've built cultures that are built on respect, an open door policy, flexibility, strong leadership is going to be huge. Manageable workloads, we all want that. But there's, opportunities for growth within in private and DSOs too. So
Mhm.
I think there's so much more to unpack just saying that I make a couple dollars more.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Lauren, for our practice owners listening in, where should they really start? Because if they do not have the problem, they wouldn't be here. So, considering that, they're having a problem in their practice and like you mentioned, they have undervalued their staff, where should they really start um, to turn things around?
Yeah, honestly, guys, start doing some one-on-ones. If you haven't done those before, figure out a cadence that might work for your schedule or your teams, but do some one-on-ones. Like maybe find a practice coach to help you with that piece too, because there's so many different resources and people that's what they're experts in is
Mhm.
just workflows within offices. But you could start by saying, why are people, like, ask yourself, why are people leaving and why are people staying in my office? Like, where could we potentially go wrong? But doing these one-on-ones with them will really encourage you to look at some key areas. Is it compensation and benefits? Is it flexibility? Is it workload, patient volume, leadership and culture? Do my team members feel valued or even heard here? But I think you need to do those one-on-ones. If that doesn't work for you, there are plenty of people out there that coach doctors on internal
Mhm.
teams too, on how to make that culture fit. And just make sure you like evaluate whether your staffing model matches your growth goals. What gets you to 10 isn't going to get you to 100. And I've said that so many times. And I think a lot of practices are trying to support 2026 demand on a 2016 workforce strategy, and that's just
Right.
not going to work anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah, because insurance rates are stuck in
Don't
2025.
don't even get me started on insurance.
2015,
Oh
2015.
Lord.
Right.
Bane of my
Uh,
existence.
okay, Jamie, give me a moment here. Oh, okay. We got a question here in the Q&A box by Kara. Beyond hourly pay, what compensation models or incentive structures are hygienists responding positively to in today's market? Kara has asked us this. Jamie, would you have some insight for us?
Lauren probably has better insight on this than I do,
Let's work
because
together.
I don't really work in that. But I would say
Sure.
that, outside of compensation, it's schedule. Does the schedule fit my lifestyle? Um, what type of incentives are there for the amount of work that I'm doing? Is there some type of a bonus structure? Is there some type of pay structure outside of what I'm being paid hourly that can, suit me in a way that makes me feel valued. But I will say that Lauren's comment on one-on-ones is key. And offices who are doing one-on-ones with their staff members are so highly successful over any other practice that is not, even a practice that is just doing a morning huddle. Because in the one-on-one, you learn what each person is looking for, because it's not always that $2 raise and it's not always the benefit package. It's the work environment. It's the way that they feel when they walk in the door. And so I just wanted to piggyback off of that by saying that is, like invaluable. If you are not doing that, that is something that should be happening, as you plan out 2027.
Yeah. Um, you know, I could name drop a couple people that would have like the expert answer on this because that's what they do. But if anyone ever wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to refer you to those people because that's a very, very good question.
Mhm.
I think hourly rate, it still matters, but I don't think it's the only lever that drives decisions for a hygienist because I've heard a ton of different models as we kind of go through and meet with our groups. And I think what we're really seeing across the market is just a shift toward total compensation and quality of life, right? I think they want flexibility. They want, condensed work weeks, part-time options, benefits, things like that. But um, I'm seeing a lot more interest in production-based incentives.
Mhm.
They still have to be structured very carefully so they don't feel like pressure over, or overproduction or kind of
Mhm.
pushing certain things. But I have seen when done really well, it really does work. They reward access and efficiency without burning out that clinician that's like, oh my God, I have to see like 14
Right.
patients today to make it work. Benefits obviously will always still matter.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that's hard in private practices, but healthcare, retirement contributions, CEs, I mean, your scrub allowance, like just saying like, hey, we'll pay for your CEs for the year. That's huge. I mean, like
Yeah.
that's a load lifted off some of these people's plates. PTO is going to be a good one.
Mhm.
But these are just kind of like baseline rather than kind of huge differentiators. But I think practices that are winning in this environment are like really the ones that are thinking beyond hourly pay. Like, how do
Yeah.
we create stability, flexibility, and respect in a way that is going to make sure that they're compensated correctly?
Mhm.
Mm, Wonderful. Thank you very much for that question, Kara. We really do hope you got some insight there. Now, Jamie, what specific behavior in a clinical team member tells you that the practice has built a real pipeline and not just a list of contacts? What are the good stuff we are looking for?
Yeah, definitely. Who is referring into the practice? Are your hygienists referring their friends into the practice? Are your assistants referring their friends into the practice who they think would be a great fit here? That's how you know that you have, I think personally, that that's how you know you have really created a great team. When your team is talking about how awesome it is to work at Dr. ABC's practice, you should really come work with us, and these are the reasons why. They're true ambassadors for the culture that you have created within your practice, and that's what you want. I mean, all of us are in a referral based type business where we want people to be saying, you have to talk to Lauren. She's gonna be the expert here. They have a great culture. That's what I think is the biggest indicator and driver of finding other great people. And I think oftentimes people don't realize that until it's a little bit too late, that they haven't created the culture that is bringing in the type of people that they want to be working with in the practice. Because the second you bring in a new team member, I mean, that kind of shakes and rocks things just a little bit. And so you want to bring in the right person. Losing a team member costs way more than I think dentists understand over time. So creating that culture is extremely important.
That's a very insightful answer. Lauren, do you have any insight into that?
I don't think I could have added anything different to hers.
Mm-mm-mm. Now, right, we are approaching end game over here. Let's see. Uh, yeah, I would love to get a closing round of perhaps a golden rule, right? So each panelist in 60 seconds, what's your golden rule for solving the hygiene and assistant bottleneck without burning out the team? Lauren, you can start us off.
Oh gosh, my golden rule for solving hygiene bottleneck without burning out my team. Um, it comes down to truly, I think we've beat the drum enough on it. It's don't try to hire your way out of a systems problem.
Mhm.
I think most practices immediately default to recruiting, posting jobs, raising pay, switching staffing vendors. But in reality, hygiene bottlenecks are usually just created by how the system was designed in the beginning. And like I said before, too, like what got you to 10 isn't going to get you to 100. So you're going to have to
Mhm.
change some systems and workflows along the way. And just the first step is trying to understand where is the constraint, like where the constraint actually is.
Mhm.
Is it my schedule design? Is it cancellations? Is it patient leakage? Is it maybe we're underutilizing our dental assistants in certain areas? Is it inconsistent demand? Do I have too many patients and not enough providers? So I think once you go through and try and diagnose that, you can truly start to kind of unlock capacity before you ever have to add headcount, if that makes sense.
Unlock that capacity before you add headcount. Check. Um, Jamie, what's your golden rule?
I agree completely with what Lauren said. I think, understanding that your hygiene retention or your employment issues are sometimes personal, but don't take them personal. Don't make it about you. Create the office and the culture that is going to drive people to your practice because that is happening across the country. People are wanting to continue to work in dental. It's a great space to work in. And so you just have to create those systems and create the office that is going to drive that, and all profitability and everything else will come from that.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Jamie, Lauren. Um, right. Now, as we close today's session, I want to share one more helpful next step. A session like this, our one here tonight, gives you great ideas. And the real value comes when you start applying them in your practice. Now, that is where the Dental Member Network can help. DMN gives dental practice ongoing access to expert guidance, proven systems, vendor savings, and monthly live AMAs. You can submit a business question anytime and get a written action plan from a vetted advisor within 3 business days. You also get today's recording plus exclusive expert created training, templates, SOPs, and scripts you can use with your team. Now, the waitlist is open now at dentalmembernetwork.com. I'll repeat that one more time, dentalmembernetwork.com. The first 100 founding members get a $49 per month locked for life. Now, you can scan the QR code on the slide or use the link in the chat to go ahead and sign up for that. And yeah, one last reminder, if your ideal clients are searching for you in your area, within your locality, make sure you're the practice that they find, choose, and trust. You can go ahead and scan that link in, you can scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the chat to book your complimentary strategy session with Echo Marketing to find out how you can go ahead and do that. Right. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Lauren and Jamie for an amazing panel that we have tonight. And of course, towards our audience members, thank you for investing this hour in your practice's success. As you exit this webinar, a quick feedback survey will pop up. Please do take a couple of seconds. I mean, it's less than a minute to fill it out because it'll let us know how we did and what we can do to improve these events so that we can serve you better in the future. Um, Thank you so much for everyone joining us here live. I'm Don Adisha. It has been my pleasure and privilege to host this webinar on behalf of the Thriving Dentist. Until next one, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.